The signal came in the dead of night. Not a whisper across human frequencies, not a random blip mistaken for background radiation, but a pulse, measured, deliberate, and old. So old, in fact, that no one should have been able to hear it. Yet it echoed through humanity's deep space sensor arrays like a cry from across time itself. At first no one believed it. On the outer edge of the Kuiper Belt, aboard listening post 47, Lieutenant Commander Reza sat up in his bunk, heart pounding. The alert tone hadn't rung in over 12 years. He'd grown used to silence, comfortable in the quiet routine of isolation, systems maintenance, and the occasional debris tracking. But this was different. The tone was sharp, urgent, and buried beneath it a signal. He raced to the control deck barefoot, slamming his hand on the console to open the interface. Lines of code rolled across the screen as the system struggled to classify what it had just received. The waveform analysis blinked, then froze. Unknown origin. Unmatched structure. Unrepeatable pattern. It wasn't natural. More than that, it was directed. He stared at the data, blinking as the signal began to unfold in front of him. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Then the computer did something it wasn't supposed to do. It asked for confirmation. Human linguistic parameters detected. Confirmed translation protocols. Reza didn't hesitate. He slammed yes. Seconds later, the translation rendered. "We see you. Do you dare answer?" His blood ran cold. Across Earth, Mars, and the orbital rings, the signal rippled like a shockwave. Deep within the United Earth Council's secure comms net, it bypassed firewalls and encrypted systems, worming its way into every command station, every major research lab, every military intelligence server like it knew where to go. In a world already strained by political fractures and ecological tension, the signal united everyone with a single, chilling reality. We were not alone. But that wasn't the part that scared people. It was the message, the tone, the challenge. They weren't offering peace. They were asking if we were ready to respond. Commander Isha Keller stood in front of the council chamber's viewing screen, her hands clenched tight behind her back. The live image from the Deep Space Telescope revealed nothing but static, background stars unmoved by the chaos the signal had created. Behind her, dozens of representatives argued, voices raised in fear, confusion, or outright denial. Some wanted to ignore the signal. Others argued for immediate military response. But no one, not even the scientists who first decoded the signal's linguistic core, could agree on one thing. What did it want? The message repeated every 37 hours. No variations. No added content. Just the same 4 words. "We see you. Do you dare answer?" Keller had seen combat. She'd lost friends on asteroid mining security runs when private corps fought over illegal cores. She'd stood in the vacuum of space, held together only by polymer mesh and stubborn grit. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was invitation by something watching us. And something about that chilled her more than any battle ever had. She turned as a young technician stepped forward from the lower tier of the room. His eyes were wide, face pale. "Ma'am, it's not just repeating," he said. "There's something hidden under it." Keller raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The signal, underneath the message, it's not static. It's a layered waveform. Like a compressed data shell. I think it's a test." "Test of what?" He swallowed. "Us." The first ship was launched 3 days later. The Mistral, a retrofitted long-range scout vessel, was fitted with every sensor suite known to humanity, along with a hastily upgraded AI core that could handle real-time signal parsing. Its crew? 5 of the most trusted deep space navigators in Earth's fleet. Volunteers. They left orbit in silence. No press. No ceremony. No promises of return. They followed the signal's origin vector. Out past Pluto, beyond the Oort cloud, into territory where no human ship had ever dared to venture. 2 weeks later, the Mistral went silent. No crash. No data burst. Not even an emergency beacon. Gone. The Council panicked. A dozen warships were recalled from Martian patrol to protect Earth. Civilian data nets were locked down. For the first time since the Europa Accords, Earth's surface cities saw ration lines, security drones in the skies, and a sudden hush fall over the world's major media outlets. The fear was quiet, controlled, but it was real. Then came the second message. This time the signal had a new line added. The same 4 words repeated. Then, one does not answer the stars in silence. And then, coordinates. Deep space. A region of interstellar nothingness. Not even a whisper of light from the nearest stars. A place no telescope had ever focused on for more than a passing scan. Commander Keller was the first to speak. "We're not just being watched," she said. "We're being summoned." Among the small selection of personnel cleared for deep black operations, one stood out. Elias Wren, an excommunications expert turned recluse after the death of his daughter on the Martian terraformers. Elias hadn't spoken to anyone in 5 years, until the signal reached him. Something about it had cracked the shell around his grief. He didn't come for fame. Didn't come to serve. He came because, for the first time since he'd lost her, he felt something. Hope. Or maybe vengeance. He joined the second mission. The Halcyon was bigger than the Mistral, armed, shielded, and escorted by 2 drone cruisers. No more scouting. This time they were ready. The moment they reached the edge of the coordinate zone, everything changed. Time stuttered. Sensors glitched. The stars shifted. Not moved, asterisk tilted star. As though space itself had blinked. And then, through the viewports, they saw it. A shape. Not a ship. Not a station. Something larger. Older. A structure wrapped in black metal, draped with lightless panels and spires, like a cathedral built in the void itself. The human brain wasn't meant to parse what it saw. It looked different from every angle. Wrong somehow. Impossible. But the signal was clear. It was coming from there. The crew of the Halcyon began transmitting greetings. In every known language. In coded mathematics. In desperate, pleading tones. No response. Then Elias stepped forward. He didn't use the ship's systems. He reached into his satchel and pulled out an analog transmitter. Rusty. One his daughter had built for fun when she was 10. He pressed the mic. "Whoever you are," he said, voice trembling, "we're listening." For a moment nothing happened. Then the entire ship shook. The stars vanished. And every screen aboard the Halcyon went white. One phrase appeared. "You dare. Then prove." Then another. "Bring your truth. Or bring your end." And the ship vanished from human space. Back on Earth, the Council watched helplessly as the Halcyon disappeared. No signal. No trace. No debris. Just gone. People demanded answers. Protests flared. Scientists were arrested on suspicion of leaking signal data to foreign governments. Conspiracies exploded. Fear rose to a boiling point. But deep beneath the surface, in an off-grid command bunker buried beneath the Andes, humanity prepared its next move. This time it wouldn't be a scout ship. It would be us. The best minds. The most experienced explorers. People who had lost, who had survived, who had endured. A crew not picked for politics but for one trait. Defiance. Leona Tahiri was one of them. A planetary archaeologist, not a soldier. She'd uncovered ancient burial sites on Mars that had rewritten entire textbooks. But what made her indispensable wasn't her knowledge. It was what she felt. The moment the signal had reached her, thousands of light years from Earth, alone on a dig site, she knew it wasn't just a broadcast. It was a call. To her. To anyone who still believed in something beyond fear. She stood now on the launch platform of the celestial humanity's most advanced deep space vessel, her hand resting on the hull. Her pulse matched the quiet thrum of the engines preparing for launch. Her team was inside. They were ready. Not because they thought they'd win, but because they couldn't let the question go unanswered. Not when someone, or something, was out there waiting. Watching. Challenging. The signal hadn't just dared them to respond. It had dared them to be human in the face of the unknown. And as the engines ignited and the stars grew closer in the view ahead, a final message appeared in the signal stream, one that no one had seen before. Encrypted. Buried so deep only Leona's custom systems had caught it. 4 words. Simple. Terrifying. You are not first. The ship crossed the threshold of deep void space. And behind them Earth began to fade. But what lay ahead was not a welcome. It was a trial. And humanity, flawed, fierce, and fragile, was about to stand before something vast. Something old. Something that had been waiting a long, long time. Watching. Listening. And now, judging. They didn't feel the moment they crossed the threshold. No shudder, no warning, no shift in stars. Just an eerie stillness that settled over the celestial like a second skin. The humming of the engines dulled, communications flattened into silence, and every sensor they had began reporting anomalies that didn't make sense. Outside space looked the same. But it wasn't. Leona sat in her chair, heart thudding, eyes fixed on the primary display as the void ahead of them twisted. It wasn't movement, not in any physical way they understood, but something subtle. Like light remembering something it wasn't supposed to. Navigation is non-responsive, said Lieutenant Corin, his voice tight with effort as he tried to correct their drift. I'm not getting inertial feedback. It's like we're floating inside a painted shell. The others didn't speak. What could they say? Their ship, the most advanced vessel ever created by human hands, was lost in a region of space that shouldn't exist. The coordinates given by the signal hadn't led to a star system or a derelict ship. Instead, they'd found a fold, something unnatural. Like the universe had been pinched and they'd been dropped inside the crease. No stars now. No known galaxies. Just the echo of the signal, repeating softly through the comms channel like a whisper across glass. Leona didn't know what frightened her more, the message or the silence that came after it. You are not first. That line kept repeating in her head like a warning. Who came before? And what had happened to them? Her hand brushed the edge of her seat as she reached for the console. She activated a data link to the internal log recorder. If nothing else, they'd document everything. If someone came after them, if anyone survived, they needed to leave behind the truth. Ship log entry, Expedition Celestial, Day 1 within anomaly. This place, we don't know what it is yet. No spatial reference points. No signs of movement. The signal led us here, but we don't understand why. Sensors failing. Time feels slower. She paused, then added, we are not afraid. But we don't know what we've stepped into. Elsewhere on the ship, Elias stood in the observation deck, staring out at what looked like complete nothingness. Not dark. Not light. Just absence. He'd never seen space look this empty before. Not even during his Martian comms days when he would sit up for hours watching cosmic radiation dance across scanner screens, hoping for some distant reply. Out here, even radiation seemed dead. But his fingers still held onto the transmitter. He didn't know why he'd brought it again. Maybe as a link to her. Maybe because it felt more real than anything else in this impossible place. He turned it on, unsure if it would even function. Do you hear us? He said into the mic. Is this what you wanted? Because we're here now. You brought us. The answer didn't come right away. But after a long pause, a low vibration rolled through the hull. Like a growl. Or maybe a breath. He leaned in closer, heart pounding. And then, faintly, asterisk, not a voice asterisk, but something like a voice. Not in words, but in memory. For a moment he wasn't on the ship. He wasn't Elias. He was someone else. A woman standing in front of a machine, her hands bloody, her voice breaking. Not human. Not alien either. A hybrid of thought and sorrow. Then another flash. An explosion. Stars tearing apart like petals in the wind. A fleet, a scream, then nothing. Then back to himself. He fell to his knees, gasping. The transmitter fell from his hands. Whatever was out there, it wasn't speaking in words. It was showing. And what it showed was pain. In the med bay, Dr. Juno struggled to calm one of the younger crew members. A biologist named Saren, barely out of her 20s, sat curled in the corner of the room, her eyes wide, breathing shallow. Her skin was pale, sweat dripping from her forehead. They're watching, she whispered. Juno crouched down beside her, voice soft. Who is? Saren didn't answer right away. Her gaze was fixed on the far wall, but her eyes weren't seeing anything there. I heard them. In my head. While I was sleeping. They were asking questions, but not with words. They were pulling things out. Memories. Juno felt a chill crawl down her spine. They asked what it felt like, Saren went on. To lose someone. To suffer. They weren't cruel. Just curious. Cold. She grabbed Juno's wrist. Her hand trembled. They don't understand us. The ship moved on its own. None of them had touched the helm in over 6 hours. Somehow, the Celestial had been locked into a slow path deeper into the anomaly, and no attempt to override the course had worked. Corin had tried everything. Manual resets. AI overrides. Even physically removing the routing panel and trying to reroute command through engineering. Nothing worked. It's like the ship's listening to someone else, he said, frustrated. We're not in control anymore. Leona stared at the screen, where a faint outline now shimmered ahead of them. The structure. Huge. It wasn't the one the Halcyon had found. This was bigger. It moved, or gave the illusion of movement, folding and unfolding like it breathed. Do you think it's a ship? Someone asked. No, Leona said, voice low. It's not traveling. It waits. And then came the sound again. The signal. But this time it wasn't just audio. Lights flickered. Gravity dipped for a second. And then across every screen a face appeared. But it wasn't a face in the way humans recognized one. It was a blend, shifting between forms. Male. Female. Alien. Unknown. Eyes that weren't eyes but points of light. Skin that shimmered like water. And it didn't speak in any tongue. It transmitted emotion. Pain. Curiosity. Disappointment. Then a phrase. Translated across the AI linguistics core in real time. You echo the ones before. They screamed. You endure. Why? Leona stepped forward. We are human, she said. We don't scream. We fight. There was a pause. Then a response. Prove it. Truth begins in fire. The ship shuddered. A beam of impossible light struck the hull, not damaging it but altering the matter itself. The walls shifted, melted, reformed. And suddenly the crew was no longer in their ship. They were standing, together, on a cold black surface that stretched into forever. No sky. No air. Just the sense of presence. Where are we? Someone whispered. Leona looked down. Her boots stood on a texture like glass, but her reflection was wrong. It showed her younger. Back when her hands were clean, her eyes still wide with wonder. Back before the war. Before the loss. Then came the voice again. You must carry what came before. And face it. If you wish to survive what comes next. They weren't just being tested. They were being measured. One by one they were pulled into memories. Not their own. Worlds dying in flame. Races consumed by machines of glass and shadow. A civilization that once reached across galaxies. Now reduced to a whisper inside an anomaly. A final warning encoded in grief and sent outward as a challenge. Not to stop others, but to prepare them. Because something worse was coming. And these beings, whatever they were, weren't saviors. They were gatekeepers. Guarding knowledge that burned as much as it saved. Elias stood again before the face or whatever represented it. He felt his throat tighten. His daughter's name burned on the edge of his lips. What do you want from us? He asked. What is this really about? The answer came slowly. Survival is not identity. Memory is not wisdom. What makes you more than those who came before? He didn't answer. He couldn't. So the face showed him. The fleet of the Trellis. The Asari. The Kundari. Names that meant nothing to humans. Civilizations that had come through the gate had been tested, and had failed. Not because they were weak, but because they refused to change. Humanity's turn had come. But this wasn't war. It was reckoning. And every choice they made, every word spoken, every reaction, was part of something larger. A trial not of strength but of meaning. They were being asked to show what it meant to be human. Not through combat, but through memory, pain, hope, defiance, through truth. Back on the Celestial, systems rebooted on their own. The crew found themselves back on the ship, confused, shaken. Some crying. Some in shock. One was missing. Saren. She had simply vanished. Not a trace. Only her journal remained, pages torn and scattered across the floor. The last thing she'd written in trembling script. They're not cruel. They just don't understand fear. The ship's engines began to spool again. Course, deeper. They had no choice now. Whatever lay at the heart of the signal, whatever force had survived the collapse of galactic empires, wanted only one thing. Understanding. Or destruction. The face appeared once more on the main screen. One more step. One more truth. Will you endure? Leona turned toward her crew. She didn't have the answer. But she knew one thing. They hadn't come all this way to run. Not after everything Earth had lost. Not after the silence of the Mistral. Not after Elias's memories or Saren's sacrifice. Humanity might be flawed. But they dared. And the stars were watching. The air inside the Celestial felt heavier now. Not because of pressure changes, life support was stable, but something deeper, something unspoken. Like the weight of too many truths, too many unanswered questions pressing down on the walls. Every breath felt a little more fragile. Every second a little more stretched. No one had spoken since the face vanished. The silence wasn't out of fear. It was the kind of silence that came before something broke. Leona stood at the central console, eyes locked on the trajectory map. The ship had stopped accelerating. Now it hovered in space, suspended just above something that didn't show on any sensor. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't a structure. It was void, a spherical absence like space had been scooped out and forgotten. A Terran reality. Or maybe a wound. We're not orbiting, Corin said quietly from beside her. We're being held. He didn't mean it metaphorically. The ship wasn't drifting. It wasn't falling. Something was gripping them in place. Not with gravity. With intention. Juno entered the command deck, her face pale. Saren's biosignal never came back. Nothing in the databanks. It's like she was erased from the ship entirely. Leona's jaw tightened. We're not letting anyone else disappear. But she knew it wasn't up to them anymore. Whatever this was, it had chosen them. And now it was waiting. They didn't have to wait long. A vibration rolled through the celestial. Soft at first, like the ship was being spoken to. Then the lights dimmed. Every screen blinked white. One line appeared again. Truth is pain. Step forward. Then a chamber opened at the far end of the ship. None of them remembered there being a chamber there before. But now it stood wide open. Dark inside. Waiting. Leona didn't hesitate. She looked at her crew. We're not staying still. If they want to test us, then they're going to get all of us. Elias stepped forward too, his hand brushing the old transmitter on his hip. Corin followed silently, and Juno only paused for a second before joining. Together they stepped inside. The chamber sealed shut. Everything went black. Leona's feet touched down on metal. Cold. Textured. The space around her had no walls, just open dark filled with faint pulses of light, like dying stars caught in slow motion. She could feel the presence of the others nearby, though she couldn't see them. A voice filled the space, not from outside but inside her head. You come bearing grief. You come bearing defiance. We ask, what do you carry that they did not? Images exploded in her mind. The burning of Titan's colonies. The Martian riots. The silence of Europa after the experiment failed. Earth choking under its own weight. Billions who had lived, fought, and dared, even when the universe offered nothing back. She felt it all. Every death. Every choice. Then something else. The memory of her brother, gone during the first asteroid sweep. Her hand on the screen during the funeral transmission. Her scream when it cut out too soon. That pain, the one she'd buried for years, rose to the surface like fire. She gasped. You feel? The voice said. They did not. And then she saw a world. Not Earth. Another civilization. Towering structures made of obsidian and glass. Skies split by lightning that never touched ground. Beings tall and fluid, shaped by gravity and thought. The Honoreth. The first to answer the signal. They came in peace. They didn't return. Because they couldn't feel what the stars had lost. Another vision. A species of architects. They built entire moons from dust. They came through the anomaly proud, wise. But when tested they denied memory. Denied grief. They failed. The trellis. Then more. One by one. Civilizations across time. Species brilliant and cruel, kind and curious. All tested. All gone. The signal wasn't a message of war. It was a firewall. It was trying to stop something. Something coming. Something only those who could truly feel might survive. Elias dropped to his knees in the chamber. His hands trembled and the transmitter cracked as it hit the floor. He couldn't breathe. He was watching his daughter die again. But not how he remembered. He saw her final hours, trapped inside the damaged terraforming unit, trying to repair the cooling line as the heat rose. She'd known. She'd recorded a message to him. He'd never received it. Until now. Her face appeared before him. Not alive. Not simulated. Remembered. Her words were soft. I wasn't afraid, Dad. I knew you'd keep going. That's what humans do. He sobbed. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was rage. Because something had kept this from him. The signal had this memory. This piece of her. Held on to it. Used it. And now it gave it back like it was a test. He stood, fury burning behind his eyes. Is this what you call truth? He shouted into the void. Pain you held hostage? You think this proves something? The chamber pulsed with light. Pain is not weakness. It is the door. The floor cracked open. A stairwell descended into shadow. They followed. They had no choice. The stairwell was longer than physics should allow. They descended for what felt like hours. No change in pressure. No change in temperature. Just footsteps echoing into eternity. Then they emerged. The room. Vast. Circular. Walls lined with orbs, millions of them, each glowing faintly with internal light. Like stars locked in glass. A single platform stood in the center. The signal pulsed again. Each orb contains the end of a civilization. Their truth. Their failure. Their last message. Corin approached one. The moment his fingers touched the surface, images filled the chamber. An alien city burning under its own sky. Creatures fleeing from unseen horrors. A child, strange and beautiful, screaming silently into a camera. Then nothing. The orb darkened. Another truth. Another failure. Leona stepped onto the central platform. Why show us this? Because you must choose what your truth will be. A beam of light shot up from the floor. Around it, holographic threads wove into shape, forming a replica of Earth. Oceans, continents, clouds moving in real time. Then fire. The image warped. Scenarios played out: extinction, collapse, assimilation. Each possibility different, but all endings. What happens if we fail? She asked. The voice didn't answer with words. Instead, another orb descended. This one wasn't glowing. It was flickering. Leona reached toward it and stopped. Inside the orb was the Halcyon crew, frozen in time, still alive, still screaming, caught in a loop. They had not died. They had not returned. They had been held. Until the next ones came. Until them. Juno's voice cracked. They're using us. As examples. As warnings. Leona clenched her fists. No, she said. As stories. The platform began to rise. The face returned. Only now it wasn't shifting. It was human. Not a copy. Not a trick. Leona's own face. It stared at her. Emotionless. You are the mirror. If you break, others will follow. The tension in the chamber thickened. The lights of the orbs pulsed faster. A low rumble echoed through the chamber. Something was changing. Far above them, a rift tore open in space. Through it they saw movement. Not ships. Not machines. Wings. Dark. White. Endless. Something was coming. Not from the signal's creators. But from beyond. The real threat. The reason for the test. The reason every species before had failed. They weren't just being prepared. They were being warned. And now backslash. There was no time left. The chamber began to shake. The orbs shattered, one by one, flooding the space with screams, memories, losses of entire worlds. The rift widened. And through it, they saw something that should not exist. Something older than the stars. Something that had watched the others fall. And now turned its eyes toward Earth. Leona looked at her crew. We have to go back. Elias raised his head. How? They'll never let us leave. Then we make them. Corin pulled his sidearm. What are we even fighting? Juno whispered, not what. Why? The lights flared. The void screamed. And somewhere in the center of the signal's core, a countdown began. 00:59:43. They didn't know what it meant. But they knew what came next. The countdown ticked in the silence. 59 minutes and 42 seconds. The numbers pulsed like a heartbeat at the center of the chamber. No sirens, no flashing alarms, just quiet, steady numbers hanging in the air like a verdict already passed. Leona stared at it, her breath caught somewhere between panic and determination. She didn't know what would happen when it hit zero. No one did. But instinct told her it wouldn't be a message. It wouldn't be another test. It would be the end of something. Find the ship, she said, voice hoarse. We have to get out of here. Corin stepped toward the edge of the platform, eyes scanning the void. Do we even know where it is anymore? That door, it moved us somewhere else. There's no map. There's always a way back, Elias muttered. They brought us here. They can't keep us here unless they're afraid of what we'll do if we leave. That word, afraid, hung in the air longer than it should have. For the first time, Leona realized something. The signal wasn't just a gate or a test. It was a containment protocol. Whatever they were inside, this space, this folded region of unreality, wasn't designed to kill them. It was designed to keep them from reaching something. She turned to the shimmering Earth hologram still hovering at the center of the room. It flickered slightly now, edges trembling with static. Then a second planet appeared beside it. Smaller, angular, unfamiliar. No atmosphere. Dead surface. But unmistakably artificial. The face returned. Only this time it looked broken. Glitching. Its features twisted between human and alien too quickly, losing form with every shift. You seek escape. But you carry infection. Elias stepped forward. Infection? What are you talking about? The pattern within you. Your mind. Your memory. It spreads. It alters the signal. What signal? The failsafe. The chamber groaned, and far above them, the rift expanded again, just enough for a glimpse of the thing beyond. It wasn't flying. It crawled. Across space. Dragging itself through subspace like a parasite burrowing through the skin of the galaxy. A living anomaly. Feeding on thought. It didn't destroy worlds by force. It consumed them by learning them. Breaking down what made them unique, their history, identity, memory, and copying it until the original collapsed. Every failed civilization in the Orcs, they hadn't just died. They'd been erased, replicated and overwritten, until nothing real was left. Leona's stomach twisted. That's what you're trying to stop. The face flickered violently. We contain the gate. But your kind, your memory, complicates the algorithm. You do not break. You reconstruct. You are noise. That was it. The twist in the pattern. Humanity's resistance wasn't in its power or its weapons or even its science. It was in its chaos. Its refusal to follow the script. They weren't supposed to reach this far. But they had. And that was breaking the system. The countdown accelerated. 43 minutes and 8 seconds. Corin shouted, "We have to move now." But the ground beneath them cracked open. The orbs began to rupture one by one, releasing memory shards like fragments of ancient dreams, dozens of dead civilizations pouring into the air around them. The noise was deafening, millions of voices speaking at once, all begging, all warning, all lost. Then, something else. A flash. A pulse of light that struck Elias like a hammer. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide. Not in pain, in recognition. He was seeing something again. Not a memory. A code. The original structure of the signal. It wasn't alien. It was hybridized. Part of it, deep in its foundation, was based on human language structures. Terran rhythm. Phonetic wave patterns. Constructed before humanity had even left its solar system. "Wait," he gasped, eyes burning. "We didn't just receive the signal." "What are you saying?" Juno asked. "We created part of it." The room stopped shaking for a moment like the system itself had paused. Leona's blood went cold. It didn't make sense. But it felt true. The early days of humanity's AI research, projects like Salus and Lorax, black-budget programs buried under military encryption, had transmitted deep space pings decades ago. Theorists had dismissed them as failed SETI experiments. But what if they hadn't failed? What if one of those pings, based on raw human emotion, unfiltered language models, grief datasets from early war memorials, had reached something? And that something had used it, adapted it, replicated it. Humanity's pain had been copied. Not just seen. Embedded. That's why the signal resonated with them. That's why the test felt so personal. Because it was. "That's the infection," Elias said quietly. "They didn't just find us. They're part of us now. And we're part of them." The light around them began to collapse inward, folding like paper caught in fire. Above, the creature beyond the rift howled. But it didn't speak in sound. It spoke in thought. And it was learning. From them. Every second they lingered, it grew stronger. Not because it wanted to destroy them. Because it wanted to become them. "You were the firewall," Leona whispered. "But we're the breach." The face split apart completely now, revealing a swarm of flickering nodes, not alive, not dead. Memory machines. Carriers of billions of species' final thoughts. A warning in a prison. But now the walls were breaking. Human defiance had accelerated something no one understood. The platform beneath them lit up. Coordinates. Vectors. A single return path. The signal was giving them one chance. But it wasn't a gift. It was an evacuation protocol. "Get back to the ship." Leona yelled. They ran. The halls were shifting again, collapsing inward, rearranging themselves to lead the humans back toward the celestial. But it wasn't just them running now. Something else was moving through the corridors. Something that looked like them. Twisted silhouettes. Half-formed. Echoes of the crew. Faces without eyes. Mouths open in silent screams. Imitations. Memory constructs. The infection was no longer passive. It was replicating them. Juno fired a shot down the corridor as one figure lunged out of the wall. It shattered into static, but 3 more appeared behind it. "Faster!" Elias shouted. They reached the hangar bay just as the Celestial came into view. The ship was different now. Scorched. Covered in strange symbols that pulsed like veins. The signal had touched it too. But it was intact. They climbed aboard. Systems flickered, unresponsive at first, but then the AI core came online with a single phrase. "Last threshold. One path. Do you dare still?" Leona slammed her hand onto the control panel. "Launch us." The engines lit. The gate formed. The rift above shrieked open wider now. The creature, no longer crawling, was reaching. Its limbs, like tendrils of unfiltered data, swept across the stars. It was hungry. And it had learned enough. The ship surged forward. But just as they reached the edge of the gate, a final twist dropped into place. Not a new signal. A memory. One none of them had lived. The Mistral. The first ship. It was still alive. Floating in subspace, caught like a moth in amber. And inside humans. Changed. But not dead. Held in the moment of decision. Never rescued. Never released. Because they had been the first to reach the core. And they had chosen wrong. The gate ahead trembled. It would only open for one ship. Them, or the ones before. It was a choice. A final test. Escape or redemption. And the countdown hit. 00:00:01. The gate shuddered in front of them, flickering like a pulse under strain. The Celestial hovered just shy of escape velocity, its hull screaming under gravitational pressure that didn't come from any celestial body but from something far older, far colder. Something watching. Inside the bridge, alarms flashed red and white. Oxygen levels dropped by half. The temperature spiked. Systems overloaded, reset, then overloaded again. Still, Leona stood at the helm, hands trembling, heart racing, every nerve in her body screaming to run. But they hadn't left yet. The Mistral floated in the distance, caught in a spiderweb of lightless strands trailing from the rift. The ship was motionless, battered but intact. Ghostly. Almost like it had been held there on purpose, frozen between dimensions, its time looped and unraveled. It was a message. A mirror. They saw movement on its deck. Silhouettes behind the fractured glass. People. Humans. Not memory constructs. Not phantoms. Survivors. Leona's chest tightened. They had come all this way to escape, to carry back the warning, to save Earth. But how could they leave them behind? Elias stared through the viewport, voice dry. They've been trapped here for years. Same space, same time. The signal's been using them like an exhibit. Then we pull them out, Leona said. Corin shook his head. The gate's barely holding as is. One more ship trying to push through, there's not enough power. We choose them or us. The AI interface flickered to life, glitching with every syllable. Only one vector. Choose. Timeline divergence destabilizes corridor. Elias looked from the rift to the crew. If we save them, we lose Earth. Juno was already in tears. If we don't save them, then what are we bringing back home? A warning without a soul? The choice hung in the air like a knife. Behind them, the rift yawned open. The creature, the memory eater, began to descend, its form vast, now more solid. A mass of limbs that shimmered like raw code, reshaping space as it moved. Its core pulsed with the light of 1,000 stolen civilizations. They were out of time. Leona closed her eyes. And jumped. The Celestial spun from its escape path and roared toward the Mistral. Engines overloaded instantly. The deck tilted hard, systems screaming. The gate began to flicker and fold in on itself. But the Celestial didn't stop. With every second, their window to Earth shrank. The AI began broadcasting autofail conditions. Hull breach warnings. Total mass limit exceeded. Still they pressed on. They docked. Magnetic locks engaged. And for the first time in 12 years, the Mistral's outer hatch hissed open. Inside, 5 people. Eyes wide. Pale. Starved. Alive. Not a word was spoken. No time for disbelief. No time for tears. Corin pulled 2 aboard. Juno and Elias pulled the others. Leona was last. She reached out to the final survivor, a man missing part of his leg, barely conscious. She hoisted him across her shoulders, every muscle burning. As she passed through the threshold, the Mistral vanished behind her. It was no longer real. Just memory. They hadn't saved anyone. They had saved the Echo. The twist struck like ice. The Mistral's crew was them. Past versions. Reflected through time. The signal had created recursive simulations, scenarios built on their own decisions. Every time someone dared to answer the stars, the signal copied them, tested them, stored them. Humanity hadn't just come once. It had come 1,000 times. This was the first time they made it this far. And now they carried the memory of all their failures inside their minds. Elias collapsed to the deck. That's why the creature wants us. That's why we're different. We don't forget. We build on top of pain. Leona stared at the flickering gate. It's not letting us out unless we make a new path. Corin looked confused. What does that mean? She turned to the console. If the signal is recursive and we've passed the test that no one else has, then the signal doesn't end, it begins again. Juno gasped. We're the new signal. Leona's fingers flew across the console. We send the warning forward. Not just back to Earth. Not just to our time. Everywhere. To any species who dares to step into this. The gate shivered. Stabilized for a heartbeat. The creature shrieked behind them. Elias stared at the pulsing countdown, now reversed. It had started to climb instead of fall. 1 hour 2 minutes and 31 seconds. They had bought time. Not for themselves. For others. Leona keyed in the transmission vector. Not to a single location, but a scatter burst. Across deep space. Across timelines. A new signal. We were seen. We answered. We survived. She added one more line. If you can feel pain, you can find your way. The AI locked onto the gate. Engines fired. The Celestial launched forward, dragging the weight of all its iterations, its echoes, its human truth behind it. The gate flared once. And they broke through. Silence. Then stars. Real stars. Cold, distant, familiar. Earth's sun burned in the far distance. They had returned. Systems rebooted. Time caught up. They were only gone 4 days by Earth clocks, but they knew they had lived years in that anomaly. Juno stood on the deck, knees weak, hand over her heart. We made it. Corin slumped in his seat, staring blankly. Did we? No one answered. Because on the console, a final message blinked in low light. A response. But not from Earth. We heard your signal. We remember pain. We are coming. Leona stared, eyes wide, skin cold. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. Humanity wasn't alone. But the universe wasn't safe either. The test was over. The next trial was beginning. And this time, they wouldn't be the only ones standing at the edge of the gate. The Celestial drifted just beyond Mars' orbit, silent in the dark, with only the hum of systems and the quiet breaths of its crew filling the bridge. A low amber light spread across the consoles, signifying stabilization. No more anomalies. No twisted space. Just the solar system, real, grounded, painfully familiar. For the first time in days, Leona closed her eyes and let herself feel everything. The weight of survival. The guilt of choices made. The impossible truth of what they'd seen. Her shoulders slumped, not from exhaustion but from release. They were home. But the question remained, what now? Elias sat cross-legged beside the viewport, staring at Earth through thick glass. He hadn't spoken in an hour. Not since the last message. The words still floated on the display, like a quiet echo from deep space. Asterisk, we remember pain. We are coming. Asterisk. Coming from where? Or, coming why? He traced his finger against the glass, the shape of continents forming beneath his breath. You think they'll believe us? He asked softly. Leona didn't look at him. Does it matter? Corin, still slumped in his chair, answered for her. They have to. Whether they believe us or not, the signal's out there. And so are others. Somewhere out there, someone just like us heard it. Someone else stood at the edge of the stars and chose to answer. Juno leaned against the wall, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep her insides from falling apart. Then it wasn't just a test for us, she said. It was a call. A relay. We passed something forward. We passed ourselves forward, Leona said quietly. The ship's long-range array came online. Earth's orbital traffic controllers were already pinging them. Confused voices asking for identification, records, timestamps. The Celestial had been gone less than a week by local time, but everything inside the ship, data logs, personal journals, internal chronometers, showed they'd experienced almost 7 months. 7 months of testing, of memory manipulation, of standing inside a chamber filled with the last thoughts of fallen species. 7 months of becoming part of something they barely understood. We can't tell them everything, Juno said. Not yet. We tell them the truth, Elias said, turning around. Maybe not all the details. But the core of it. The signal. The anomaly. The warning. And the creature? Corin asked. Elias hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, especially that. Leona stood and stepped toward the communication console. Her hands hovered over the controls. She remembered the creature's eyes, not physical but real. The way it moved through the void like hunger given form. Not evil. Just empty. It didn't destroy for conquest. It erased for understanding. And humanity had been the first to endure its gaze and survive it. Because they refused to be understood. Because humans felt pain but didn't let it define them. They carried it. Layered it. Rewrote themselves from it. The signal hadn't been testing for strength or intelligence. It had been searching for a species that could bear the unbearable, remember the unspoken, and still choose to move forward. She opened the line. This is Captain Leona Rell of the Celestial, broadcasting from just beyond Mars' orbit. We've returned from coordinates designated as Signal Vector 01. We have recovered all personnel. We have confirmed extraterrestrial origin of the signal. We are bringing data, warnings, and something more. We need immediate debrief, but we urge no contact with the signal structure. Not until we explain." She paused. Her voice cracked. "And one more thing, tell the council we weren't the first. But we might be the last to get a chance to decide what comes next." She ended transmission. Silence returned for a beat. Then a soft chime as Earth responded. Voices scrambled on the line. Protocols activated. Satellites aligned. It had begun. Later, Leona sat in the crew quarters alone. The lights were dim. Everyone else had gone to rest, or at least try to. She held Saren's notebook in her hands. The one that had been left behind after Saren vanished into the anomaly. But now it was whole again. Not damaged. Not torn. The pages were filled with entries that hadn't existed before. Descriptions of a place beyond the anomaly. A realm of echoes and emotion. And on the last page, in clean handwriting that didn't match Saren's original, were the words. "They remember us now. That's what matters. We mattered." Leona closed the book gently. She looked toward the stars. They had lost people. Maybe not bodies, but parts of themselves. The things they saw they would never forget them. Faces of lost species, choices that led to collapse. But mixed in with it was something else. A kind of quiet pride. Because even in the heart of something built to unravel them, they'd held together. Earth's response was slower than expected. They had known it would be. Humanity wasn't good at quick trust, not even in itself. But when the science teams cracked open the Celestials' logs, when they saw the data, when they read the fragmented code laced with echoes from civilizations no one had ever known existed, the tone shifted. Not disbelief, but fear. Then wonder. Then urgency. The word's first contact spread across media within 20 hours. Then, non-terrestrial memory structure. Then, species extinction event risk model. Then came the questions. Was Earth in danger? Had they brought something back? Leona, Elias, Juno, and Corin were all moved to secure facilities in Luna Base for a week. Tests. Interviews. But no threats. Because the truth was undeniable. The Celestial had returned from where no one else ever had. And that made them more than explorers. It made them witnesses. Eventually their story went public. Not the full story but enough. The galaxy wasn't empty. It was filled with graves. And the signal was the last voice of those who fell. Years passed. Humanity didn't fall apart. It changed. For the first time in its history, Earth had a reason to look outward not just in ambition, but in caution. They didn't chase the signal again. They studied it, learned from it, created new ways to preserve memory, emotion, cultural threads. Not just to archive them, but to carry them forward in case others came after. And something else happened. Other signals were received. Not like the first. Not so massive. But faint echoes. Reflections. Some sounded like warnings. Others sounded like greetings. Across the stars, somewhere, other civilizations were waking up. Maybe they too had seen the creature. Maybe they had passed their own version of the test. And now the stars were watching each other again. Not with fire, but with hope. Leona never returned to space. She didn't need to. Her story had already gone farther than any ship ever could. She spent the rest of her life helping shape what would become the foundation of memory, an initiative to preserve not just history but emotion. To treat grief and triumph as data. Not to lock it away but to make it portable. Something a species could carry. Something the galaxy might need. When asked what she'd learned out there beyond the veil, she would pause. Then say, "We're not alone. We never were. But being remembered, that's something we still have to earn." Elias returned to his family. Quietly. He never spoke publicly again, but one of his daughter's childhood sketches ended up in the central archive of the Foundation. A drawing of a starship, crude and messy, with a smiling sun in the corner. She had drawn it before she died. The signal had remembered it. So he remembered her. Juno became a leader in xenopsychology. Corin taught deep space engineering. Both rarely spoke of what happened inside the anomaly, but they remained close. A bond forged not by duty, but by endurance. The Celestial was retired. Stored in a lunar facility, covered in layers of dust and glass. But even now, its systems still flicker on from time to time. A low pulse. Like the ship remembers. Some nights, deep in the lunar dark, a weak signal repeats through the walls. You were not first. But you were seen. You were felt. You remain. And Earth listens. Because the stars might speak again. And next time someone else will answer.